it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. And we've all been raised on television and the internet to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars. But we won't. We're slowly learning that fact. A lot of us are very, very pissed off. 3 years ago, I was kidnapped with 3 others to become a star. They became the people you know and love today. I escaped. I didn't know Ubers carpooled. That was all I could think when the car pulled up in front of me. It was a sleek-looking ride, the type I would never, ever be able to afford. What really caught my attention were the 3 silhouettes sitting in the back. I hadn't taken an Uber in a while, and the last one I'd taken, I'd been the only passenger, so I figured that was how they rolled. Apparently not. The Uber driver stuck his head out of the window. He looked to be several years older than me, a stoic-looking guy in all black, with fair hair sticking from a cap, who at first glance looked like he'd been stripped of personality. The guy slid off his Ray-Bans and regarded me with a cocked brow. I wondered if he could read minds because I was internally screaming. I wasn't used to carpooling, especially with strangers. Maybe he could see the panic in my expression, the twist in my lips that were tasting the words. Oh, okay, it's okay. It doesn't matter. But I didn't say it. I was too mortified to say it. His face sort of contorted a little, like he was going to smile, but the facial pull wasn't yet in his programming. Gelling his chin at me, the Uber cleared his throat. Lily Sparks? I expected him to laugh, what with my deer caught in the headlights expression. But he just frowned at me, impatience flickering in his eyes. Are you getting in? When I could only stare back at him, his lip curled. If you're wondering why you're not getting a private ride, this is a college district. I don't get paid enough. Grouping you kids together is a hell of a lot easier. Is that a good enough explanation, Princess? I shouldn't have been surprised at his tone. After all, I knew what my generation were like, especially in California. My cheeks were smoldering. I nodded. Yes, thank you, I said, faking enthusiasm. But the idea of jumping in a car with 3 random strangers was not appealing in the slightest. It just made me progressively sourer that I didn't have a driving license or a car. Well, those were things that cost money, and I was broke. I didn't make any move towards the car despite confirming my name. I almost felt like my shoes were glued to the sidewalk. But I couldn't back out of the ride. I'd already paid for it. Tossing the guy a nervous smile, I forced one foot in front of the other and reached out, pulling open the door, my jaw aching from grinning. Squeezing between my seatmates, I risked a glance at the strangers I was sitting with, though it's not like I could ignore them. The guy sitting on my left, a moody-looking kid with a mop of light blonde curls falling in his eyes, his head pressed against the window, eyes closed, like he was imagining himself in a music video. The boy's knee was uncomfortably sticking into my thigh. The other 2 squashed against the window were a girl with blonde curls tied in a red ribbon with her eyes glued to a phone, and another guy with dark brown hair sprouting under a grey hoodie. The 3 of them seemed to be around my age, fairly attractive, first or second year college kids. The car ride was almost painfully awkward. The only noise was the static from the radio the driver was playing at a low volume. I could just about hear an enthusiastic presenter yelling through interference. I had no clue what he was saying, though. Well, to distract myself from my seatmates, I stared out of the window at the early evening rush hour, multicolored lights flashing in a blur. The blonde girl's phone vibrated, and she lifted it to her ear. Hi, Mom. Yeah, I'm doing great. The brunette, who until then had found remarkable interest in the sleeves of his hoodie, suddenly turned to look at the blonde, and I caught a quizzical look in his eyes, a smile playing on his lips. I didn't blame him, though. We were thinking the same thing. Judging from the blonde girl's tone, she definitely wasn't great. The way her voice broke around the word was clear evidence of that. Her expression was pure panic. The audition. Her voice rose slightly, and the blonde shuffled uncomfortably in her seat. It went good. I think I'll be getting a call back. And they said my dancing was... Her fake smile faltered, the fist that wasn't holding the phone clenching in her lap. Yes, Mum, I understand. She nodded. I'll do better, I promise. If college doesn't work out, I'll move back home and work at the store. Yes, I know how much you're struggling, and I want to help you. Hello? After staring at her phone screen for a second, the girl tipped her head back and blew out a breath. Bitch. With a frustrated hiss, the girl shoved the phone in her jeans and leaned back into her seat. I could tell she was trying not to cry, and part of me wanted to comfort her, though I had no idea what to say. It's not like I could pretend to relate to what she was going through. I never wanted to make it in LA. I was there for college and that was it. Though I knew of kids in my classes who were trying out for auditions or had been lucky to have callbacks. She was pretty though, with cat-like green eyes framed by blonde curls, and the red of her ribbon contrasting with the white blonde of her hair, making her look like a Disney princess. Looking at the girl, I knew she'd make it somewhere, though she didn't even look confident in herself. After a while of watching the traffic, the sun bouncing across the horizon, I started to realize something was off. The ride was taking far too long. Even in the rush hour, it was only supposed to be a 15 to 20 minute ride back to my apartment. But that wasn't even taking the others into account. Where were they going? Well, I'd figured that the four of us lived near each other, so we were grouped. Except we'd been in the car for way over 20 minutes, and the driver hadn't said a word. Just as I was starting to inwardly panic, the guy who'd been napping against the window finally straightened up in his seat. Excuse me. His voice was heavy with sleep, eyes half-lidded. He arched his neck, peering out of the front window. Dude, I think you're going the wrong way. I asked for the Kensington building, and this is nowhere near. You're on the wrong route. Well, the blonde caught on. She sat up, her eyes wide. Yeah, he's right. You're going the wrong way. To my surprise, the driver didn't reply. Maybe it was my imagination, but I could have sworn he stepped on the gas. Hey! Kensington was getting progressively more frustrated. Can you not hear me? You're nowhere near my building. Instead of answering the two of them, the driver reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a bound leather book with yellowing pages curled with age. He passed it to the blonde. Write your names on the next available page, please. What? The girl looked baffled. Like a review? No, I mean your names. Full names. First and second are compulsory. If you want, you can add your middle. Are you serious? She laughed. If I wanted to leave you a bad review, which I'm gonna do, by the way, I prefer the Uber app. Well, the driver tutted. I've been driving for well over 50 years, princess. Bad reviews are the least of my problems. Now, sign your names. Nice and clearly on the dotted line, please. 50 years? The kid who'd been mute the whole car ride seemed to come to life, looking up from where he'd been pulling his sleeves over his hands and making little puppets with them. I was taken aback by his accent, a strong Aussie Kiwi twang. He snorted. That's bullshit. How old are you? Like 30? That's some good anti-aging cream you must have. Don't antagonize him, the girl shrieked, shoving the kid. Her gaze went to the front. I could tell she was freaking out. She was practically vibrating in her seat. So, if we sign this stupid book, you'll let us out? Nodding, the driver hummed. Something like that. The blonde sat back and opened up the book. I couldn't help risking a look. She flicked through the 4 pages of names written in blue and black cursive. I don't understand. Her voice was shaking. These go back to the early 60s. At first I thought she was seeing things or over-exaggerating, but when I squinted, I saw she was right. The blonde was tearing through the pages, right back to the start of the book. The very first pages of names in groups of 4 were practically unintelligible, but the date next to each of them was no mistake. 8th of December, 1962. 9th of December, 1962. 5th of December, 1962. Finally, the girl looked up from the book. "Can you let me out? I need to get home." The driver shook his head. "I can't do that, I'm afraid. They'll sign your names in the book. It makes things easier." "What?" The words were flying out of my mouth before I could bite them back. I sat up, wrapping my fingers around the strap of my backpack. The car was going faster, and I struggled to hold on for dear life. Next to me, the others were the same. Well, I was done. Whatever game he was playing, I was over it. "Can you let me out? I should be able to walk from here." I made sure my voice was sturdy. Well, Kensington shot me a look, his lips curving and brow raising. "What makes you so special? He's not letting us out, so why should he change his mind for you?" I ignored him, my voice quaking. "If you don't let me out right now, I'm calling the cops." "Yeah, I second that." Hoodie reached into his bag. "You got 5 seconds. I wasn't expecting the car to fly forwards. I managed to hold on, but the others were caught off guard, the blonde slamming into the Aussie and sending him hitting the window with a painful hiss. The other kid whacked his head on the front seat. "Are you kidding me?" Kensington yelled. "Let us out, now!" "It's not my fault," the driver snorted. "You kids have a death wish. Surely your parents taught you car etiquette." Leaning over my left seatmate, I grabbed for the door with trembling hands. But it was locked. Of course it was. I pulled on it, but no such luck. I was ready to start screaming when something cool zipped across my chest, forcing me back into my seat. When the boys hissed out too, the girl letting out a shriek, I realized the same thing was happening to them. Our seatbelts. I hadn't even thought of putting mine on in the first place, but this one was different. It wasn't the kind I was used to, comfortable and loose across my chest. I had sweet memories of riding in the back of my dad's truck as a kid, knowing that the ratty belt holding me to my seat would stop me from flying through the windshield. Well, this one was practically slicing into my shirt, pinning me to my seat. When I struggled, I found the edge of the belt cutting further into my chest, practically suffocating me. The more I tried to lean forwards, it's like the damn thing had a mind of its own, growing tighter and tighter over my chest. The others were locked into a state of shock for a moment, and I caught their expressions in the flash of the headlights. Fear. The blonde girl was crying, tears trickling down her cheeks. The kid with the hoodie let out a sharp exhale. When I turned to him, his bag had fallen off his lap when the car had lurched forwards. His arms were pinned behind the belt. "Oh, fuck." His voice was hysterical, and I had to swallow barf that was shooting up my throat. "We're gonna die, aren't we? I've seen Netflix drama about this type of thing. Uber drivers who murder customers who give them bad reviews." Well, his words might as well have been a knife sticking into my spine. I tried to reach for my bag, but the belt held me back, restricting me tighter and tighter. "Please." I hated how pathetic my voice was then. "We don't want any trouble." "Are you seriously begging him?" Kensington snapped at me. When I turned to him, he was squirming in his seat, trying to reach his jeans, but he was stuck. "You're dead," he gasped out. "When I call the cops, you, my friend, are gonna go to jail for a long fucking time." Then he jerked his head at me, the blonde girl, and the Aussie. "I don't know what the hell you want, but we're not gonna give it. I mean, are you kidding me? We're broke-ass college students. Why not kidnap an A-lister? They'll have clothes worth thousands. My jacket's from the thrift store, and I have like $10 in my bag in change." The blonde nodded, struggling wildly. "I don't have any cash on me, I swear." Well, the driver finally turned to us, a smug smile plastered across his lips. There was a gleam in his eye that turned my gut. Well, this car is, one of a kind. I'd like you kids to know that. It can't be detected, and it blocks out radio, phone, and Wi-Fi signals at the touch of a button. It's also soundproof, so don't bother screaming. I have a headache. Also, I wouldn't struggle if I were you. The more you fight the belts, the tighter they'll get. And trust me, you do not want that. I once had a group that struggled so much they managed to skewer themselves and made a mess. I had to get a new car since the blood wouldn't come out of the seats. His fingers tapped a beat on the wheel. Saw potential in them too, which was sad. I'm never wrong about the kids I take. The kids you take? Hoodie parroted. Wait, what do you do? What do you do to them? The driver shrugged. Well, you already know what happens to the ones who struggle. As for the ones that actually do as they're told and sign their names in the book, well, I'd like to say good things. So, if I were you, I'd do as you're told. Good things? Kensington was stiff in his seat. What's good about being kidnapped? Oh, you'd be surprised, young man. Now, be quiet. I have a headache. Don't fight your belts and you'll be fine. And that was when we stopped struggling. The guy could have been lying, sure, but I could already feel my belt cutting into my skin. I went still. Stiff. The driver turned back to the wheel and cranked the radio up. Don't worry. He sent us a half smile when the blonde girl let out a spluttered sob. If I'm correct, and I usually am, you four have got nothing to worry about. None of us answered him. I don't think we dared. There was a song on the radio, some pop song I recognized. I don't know why, but I latched on to the lyrics. Young love, lost youth. It was what I suddenly wanted. I wanted to fall in love and experience heartbreak. I wanted to sing at the top of my lungs, dance like nobody was watching. Everything I'd ever taken advantage of, I prayed to be able to do again. Everything I complained about meant nothing. I didn't realize I was crying until Kensington nudged me. Looking up at him, I wondered what his story was. Prominent eye bags shadowing olive skin, what looked like a reassuring smile trying to crack from his lips. It's okay, he murmured, leaning into me. Though he wasn't just talking to me, his eyes were on the others, his expression determined. As soon as we get to wherever this asshole's taking us, we're taking him down, 4 against 1. The boy's voice was panicked, his breaths coming out in sharp pants. Unless you 3 want to get hacked apart. Shut up, the blonde whimpered. Just shut up, you're not helping. I'm saying the truth, Kensington hissed back. Are you in or not? It's not worth it, Hoodie breathed. Didn't you hear the guy? If we don't struggle, we'll be okay. Kensington actually laughed, though it was more of a sob. Do you believe him? He let out an exasperated hiss, trying to throw himself forwards. The belt snapped him back, and he yelped. I didn't think Aussies were that gullible. Hoodie's head whipped around, his expression darkening. Under the dim glow of the car lights, I noticed his eyes were sparkling with tears. I'm a Kiwi, dickhead, he spat out, ducking his head, his voice choking up. I shouldn't even be here. Kensington paused before. Yeah, there's no difference between an Aussie and a Kiwi. And Hoodie scowled. Try to tell that to a Kiwi, they'll smack you in the face. Just stop, the blonde whisper shrieked. What use is arguing? We should be working together. Kensington raised a brow. That's what I suggested, and Bird Boy over there ripped my head off. The girl ignored him. We should sign the book. It's what he wants. Before any of us could reply, she writhed under her belt, wincing. I bit back a cry when I saw the belt tightening around her, the edge cutting into her breast. Hey, asshole, you said if we sign the book, you'll let us go, right? The driver shook his head. He was laughing, his body shuddering under the dim light of the headlights. "I never said anything about letting you go. If you sign your names, I said things will go a lot easier. It's mainly so we can process you four faster." Something cold slithered down my spine, and the girl sat back in her seat with a whimper. I expected her to ask what he meant, but I don't think she wanted to know. None of us did. I figured the others would try something else, maybe banging their fists on the windows. But the boys lapsed into silence, and my eyes grew heavy. But I couldn't fall asleep. It felt like hours had gone by when the car slowed down, and set the four of us into a frenzy. The Kiwi tried to lunge forwards, but that only resulted in his belt tightening. I tried to see where we were, but every time I moved, there was pain. And it was pain like I'd never felt before, cruel and unrelenting, slicing into my flesh. The only one of us who was able to see out of the window was Kensington, who'd been smart enough not to fight the belts. He pressed his face against the glass. I tried to follow his gaze, but I couldn't fully see where he was looking without forcing myself forwards. His voice was heavy with sleep, and I wondered if he'd nodded off at some point when the rest of us had sunk into uncomfortable silence. "Where the hell are we?" The driver parked the car easily before switching off the radio. He twisted round to smile at us. "Well, for some, it's their final destination. But for others, for the shining stars that you guys know and love today, it's a place of rebirth." Well, I didn't have time to question that. Before I could even begin to think about protesting or attempting to make a run for it, my belt zipped back into place, and I could breathe again. There were nasty red marks where it had cut into my shoulders and chest, welts decorating my skin. I couldn't be relieved, though. The four of us were then herded out of the car. For a hopeful second I thought, oh God, I really thought we could overpower him, just like Kensington said. Well, he jumped out first, and then I did, followed by Hoodie and the blonde girl. But when the driver pulled out a 9mm Glock and pointed it between my eyes, swinging it between each of us teasingly, baiting us to challenge him, I lost all faith that I was going to see my mom ever again, or do any of those things I'd taken advantage of in my life. I didn't run. Just looking at the others' expressions, they didn't dare either. We just sort of stood there, shivering, wondering when he was going to strike. I pictured it far too morbidly in my head. Bang! The gun would go off, and Kensington would drop to the ground, a bullet wound in his head. Then Hoodie and the blonde girl. They would hit the ground, and I'd have that split second to run. To either stand there, frozen solid, or take a chance and run. I wondered what it was like to be shot in the head. Would I feel pain? Would it be like going to sleep? The temperature had dropped, a cutting chill blowing my hair from my face. The driver tied our hands behind our backs with scratchy rope. Standing still in the bitter cold, I finally glimpsed what our so-called final destination was. It was a house. Just a normal house. The type my parents had back home. Risking a look at the others, we seemed to share a collective feeling of panic. It looked out of place in the middle of nowhere, windows lit up with warm golden light. The door was bright red. There were cars parked outside, and bizarrely, what looked like a hot tub on a wooden platform, sun loungers dotted around it. Okay, I get it. Kensington stumbled forwards when the driver stuck his gun in the back of his neck. Look, you're planning on making us servants, right? For your fancy-ass country house. He let out a scoff. Look, you do realize you can just ask people, right? I mean, there's no need to... Ow! He hissed out when the driver prodded the gun into his spine. Stop talking and walk. His voice was calm. First of all, before we go in, I want to know your names. You'll be asked for them again, but I want to know them for my book. Kensington scoffed. Sure, that makes sense. He staggered further, tripping over his own feet. I remember taking mental pictures of the sky, the moon poking through clouds dipped in light. My name is Roman. Quinn, the girl whimpered. My name's Quinn. Next to me, Hoodie was struggling in his bindings, his gaze glued to the mildew we were treading through. Luca. My own name choked in my throat. Lily. The driver laughed. Come on, kids. I said full names. I've never heard a less enthusiastic group. Roman laughed. He actually laughed, and I indulged in it. A real laugh, which I didn't think I'd hear again. I was hyperfixated on his wriggling fingers darting in and out of the holes in his restraints. Roman Denver, he spat. Happy? Again, my own name was leaking through my lips. It felt wrong. I wanted to use a fake one, but would it even matter? Would it make my death any less inevitable? Lily Sparks. The others followed suit. Quinn Bracken and Luca Islington. The four of us were led inside, a hallway lit with candles. That's when I started stumbling, struggling to walk. Quinn came to an abrupt stop when a door was pulled open at the end by two guards, and the driver stuck his gun into the back of her neck. Was I not clear, Quinn? He murmured. Behave, and like I said, this will end well for you. The girl didn't move. She just sobbed. The driver grabbed her shoulder and shoved her forwards. When we were unceremoniously shoved into the room as a four, I was greeted to darkness once again, lit up by a chandelier of candles hovering above. Roman was standing by my side. He glanced up, his expression crumpled with confusion. Oh, these guys really like their candles. His voice was quaking, but I was grateful for it. If it weren't for him, I'd be like Quinn, struggling in the driver's grasp. In front of us was a desk made of rich mahogany. There were 4 people, 2 women and 2 men, sitting behind it. Each of them had a single piece of paper in front of them and a glass of water each. When one of the women spoke, her voice was like wind chimes, hypnotizing. She, like the others, was in casual wear. She wore a red blouse and pencil skirt, and she was beautiful, truly beautiful. Her skin was white like snow, lips blooming blood red. Line up, please, she said, leaning forward. I want to get a good look at them. I don't know what came over me, but I found myself stumbling into formation with the others. Well, their eyes went straight to Luca. Remove the hood, or we won't even consider him. Well, the driver nodded and dragged the boy's hood down, revealing the mop of curls he looked self-conscious of. One of the men sitting at the desk hummed. We'll start with the blonde. He inclined his head, his gaze stapled to Quinn. What's your name, sweetheart? Quinn was shaking. Quinn Bracken, she whimpered. Please, I don't know what's going on. I just want to go home. Pretty, the man murmured. No, gorgeous. He jutted his chin at the driver. Turn her around. I'd like to get a good look at her. The driver did as he was instructed, gently turning Quinn around, while the strangers marveled at her. The woman was smiling. She is beautiful, she said. What are we thinking? TV star? Should we start her off as an influencer? What? Quinn squeaked. The man's smile disappeared. Jones. He nodded at the driver while the woman took a dainty sip out of the glass in front of her. I thought you said they would be compliant. I wasn't expecting them to talk back. They are to be docile and submissive. The driver, or Jones, chuckled. Trust me, they're worth it. And don't worry. If they open their mouths again, I'll take action. I should hope so, the woman said, and her eyes flicked to Roman. Show me the boy. I could only watch, baffled, as Roman was paraded in front of the 4 judges. On your knees, boy, the woman said, and then Roman lowered himself to his knees, squeezing his eyes shut when Jones ran his fingers through the boy's hair, pulling at his cheek and lips like he was a doll. Very handsome indeed. I like him. The same was done with Luca, though the judges saw him more of a puppy. They cooed at his so-called adorable dimples, praising his symmetrical facial structure and strong jawline, though they all agreed his hair was definitely a flaw. We can get rid of it, the woman said with a smile. It's no problem. And her eyes glittered. I'm thinking a children's network for him, Disney or Nickelodeon. Then, when he's made a name for himself, we'll get into some more adult teen dramas, or I can see him becoming a teen girl's crush. The other man, who had not yet spoken, straightened up. As for the other one, I think we're looking at the next Noah Centineo. He flashed his eyes to me. I could feel his gaze taking all of me in, hyper-fixated on my flaws, on the pimples I tried hard to hide with foundation, my funny-shaped nose and wonky teeth. I could tell he wasn't impressed. Turn around, he ordered. And I did. I turned around for him, my head spinning. When he scoffed, the others murmuring amongst themselves, I wanted to scream. She is pretty, the woman spoke up. Not gorgeous like the blonde, but she does have a youthful look to her. Yes, I can see it, the man said. Like the other kid, we start her off on a children's network. I can see her on Disney. I nearly laughed. I held it in, but it was hard not to laugh. It's so surreal, so completely fucking surreal. Me, on Disney. When I was told to turn back around, I could barely stand up properly. Jones had to keep straightening me up. The door opened, and a girl who was younger, around 18 or maybe 17, hurried in. She was dressed in a white dress, her feet bare against the cool wooden floor. Her eyes were half-lidded, lips slightly parted, as if she were about to say something, but couldn't. Jones retrieved what looked like an old-fashioned chalice and situated himself in front of her. A final test. The woman with the voice like wind chimes spoke again. We will taste each of you. If you're not pure of heart, then you will join us, and we will make you a star. Her lip twitched. If you are pure of heart, you will offer yourself to us. What? Rowan finally sputtered out. Are you fucking kidding me? What are you, some kind of cult? Before he could continue, Jones lunged at the boy, grasping him by his hair and shoving him back to his knees. I was pushed to the ground too, followed by the other two. One of the men left the table and made his way over. He held a knife and cut into our hands one by one. I barely felt the sting of the blade slicing through my flesh. I thought he was going to force us to squeeze it into the chalice, but he lapped it up from our hands, and I suppressed the urge to turn and try and run. Try and get out. The guards were in front of the door. There was there was no way out. The man tasted Roman first. His facial expression crumpled and he spat it out with a spluttered laugh. Young man, what did you do? Roman didn't move. I didn't do anything. The man's eyes were shining. Really? Because you taste revolting. You are far from pure-hearted, my boy. Rowan ducked his head. The woman, still sitting at the table, laughed lightly. There's no judgment here, at least of your past endeavors. When you join us, you'll forget your old life. Every bad thing you ever did will be cleansed from your mind. Well, I wasn't expecting the boy to answer, but he lifted his head, his eyes glistening. I burned down my elementary school, he whispered. I burned down my elementary school and blamed it on my teacher. The man dropped his bloody hand like it was contagious. And what are you forgetting to tell us? Roman shook his head. No. Young man, the one from the front purred. It's better to get it out. You are the type we want. The boy was trembling now. A kid died, he whispered. A kid died and I left him in there. I left him in there to burn. Taking a step back, the man's smile broadened. See, it wasn't so hard, was it? Roman didn't speak, though. He was a sobbing mess and I couldn't look at him. Luca was next. Again, his blood was spat out. The man's laugh chilled me to the bone. Again. He gripped the boy's chin, the claws of his nails forcing Luca to face him. Murder, he murmured. Son, I really didn't think you were capable of that. No. The boy shook his head, struggling in the man's grip. No, it was night. I was driving and he came out of nowhere. The man cocked his head. But let me guess, you left the poor kid to die, am I right? Luca didn't speak. But not just that, he cackled. Did you take anything from him? A wallet, perhaps? Again, the boy didn't answer, but the man looked gleeful. When he moved to Quinn, and sure enough, her blood making his eyes pop out of his head, she sang like a canary before he could question her. I stole all of my parents' savings for my tuition. The man held her gaze. That's not all, though, is it? Quinn dropped her head. I stole the money that was supposed to go to my dad's medical bills. And he died. He died and I still took it for my tuition. Quinn was sobbing, but the man was laughing, reveling in her pain. I was next. My hand was sliced open and he tasted me, his tongue grazing across the cut on my palm. I waited for him to laugh or spit my blood back in my face. Instead, he hummed before lapping at it again. I resisted against yanking my hand back. Interesting, he murmured. You are of pure heart, young lady. Well, I didn't know what that meant, but it didn't take me long to find out. Everything seemed to go by like the world had been catapulted into fast forward. The girl in the white dress was forced in front of them, her throat slit, the chalice filled with glistening ruby. Drink, the other three were ordered. Her blood is mixed with a special ingredient. Believe me, it is wonderful. You won't be able to get enough of it. No, Roman said, Luca echoing his words. You're crazy. But the woman just giggled. Young man, do you think you really have a choice? Either drink and join us, or offer yourself to us, like dear Lucy here. She nodded to the dead girl in the white dress. Do you want to forget your past, Well, they did. I don't know why they did. Maybe they thought they would be cleansed of the things they'd done. I could only watch as they drank, one by one, at first sipping uncertainly and then gulping down, spluttering and giggling drunkenly. I watched who they were, those personalities I'd known, Roma, Luca, and Quinn, evaporate from their eyes. Any rebellion they had was gone, and they surrendered to it, whatever it was. Well, the last time I saw them, they were on their knees, slurping blood from the floor, laughing in glee with monstrous snarls, their eyes devoid of anything human. Not anymore. The woman was smiling at me. Her eyes were wide with greed, and I was paralyzed, watching the ones I thought were the hunted, like me, become the hunters. Take the pure heart downstairs and harvest her for the next 4. Her words sent needles sticking into my heart, but I couldn't move. I couldn't stop looking at the others. They were like animals. Our kidnappers indulged in their greed, gathering more blood into the chalice and letting them drink from it. The more they drank, the less human they become, adopting animalistic grins that I could no longer recognize. Jones nodded and grabbed my shoulder, yanking me back. Of course, Eloise. I was taken out of the room and back down the hallway. But instead of taking me downstairs, Jones kept going. The doors were opening and I could feel the wind on my face. I could see the moon again. I was sobbing. I was screaming. My binds were cut, but I couldn't move. Go. Jones's breath was in my face. He grabbed my shoulders and shook me. Do you hear me, kid? Go. Well, I didn't question him. I ran. I fucking ran until I found the car, until I found my phone. The others' phones were gone, and I realized it was never meant to be me. It was always going to be them, and for reasons I will never know, Jones chose to have mercy. It's been 3 years since I was taken. I sometimes watch Roman on Netflix and Disney, along with Luca. They, of course, debuted with different names. You know them as big names, and I know them as some unlucky college kids. Well, our kidnappers were right. All 3 of them made it. Quinn is exactly who they wanted her to be. She's one of the biggest influencers on the planet and has been in countless movies since. Her name is plastered over award shows, and she's currently bringing out a perfume for her millions of fans. I'm happy for them. Don't know why I'm happy for them, because at the back of my mind I know they are no longer human. I know that Lucy's blood did something to them. They've barely aged, and something about that fucking terrifies me. And it's made me realize LA is filled with Romans and Quinns and Lucas. I want you to know their real names. Even when you see another one, I want you to know that behind the star that you see is a person who was forced to become a Hollywood puppet. I don't know why Jones spared me, but I'm so grateful he did. I've made sure to do everything I took advantage of before. And I'm writing this to spread awareness. Jones saved me, but he might see you as perfect for them. So please, be careful. That is, unless you want to be a star. I've always wanted to see them again. Face them. I don't know if they're still in there. Somewhere. So that is your Friday evening's entertainment, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed that one. I thought that was a very, very intriguing idea for a story. And, well, hope it isn't true. Could be though, couldn't it? What do you think? Are you part of the death cult of stardom? But seriously, I really enjoyed that one. And as ever, I ask for your thoughts, feelings, and whatever else in the comment section below the video, and I'll do my best to come and have a chat with you all. Well, it's enough for 1 week. I'll be back again on Sunday, and Monday. Oh God, it just never ends, does it? But, well, I love doing this, so it's all good. Anyway, try and enjoy your weekend as best you can. I'll be back again with you soon. But until next time, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.